In episode 25 of the Lands of Dimidium, our adventurers had exited the Temple of Alcarn, met up with a clan of lizard folk known as the Mistscales, and were heading back towards their nesting grounds atop the back of several triceratops.
We can't hesitate because we have to make it look like we've been here before. So we just gotta follow what they do, run up their tail, jump behind their head, and hang on for dear life.
Here we go.
As the triceratops hurtled through the jungle, the rain started falling and the jungle path became muddy and treacherous.
Okay, lean back.
15 gonna help me?
15 is definitely going to help you. So you're able to get the Triceratops kind of back on track. You kind of go around, you have him walk on a couple of tree branches, and he's able to regain his footing.
The group had to stop and make camp, and surrounded by their newfound brethren, they discussed the impending attack with Mixweta.
The gnolls have no business in attacking the lizard folk. Whether we like it or not, we are one of the lizard folk now. So we have to pretend as such.
My friend, I am a gnome.
I know.
Don't say this too loud.
Agnomeio, have you looked in a mirror today?
They learned that Mixweta had run from the Gnoll warband in fear of a Gnoll known as Ripper.
Very dangerous. He's been hunting lizards for a long time. He say his hunters finally found the nest and they're going to attack. And I get away. I'm not like them.
Who uses a javelin and rope to impale his enemies, pull them to him, and then feast upon them. While they were talking, Kuto, the head of this war party, came up to the group's fire, reached into a burlap sack, and offered Daffy the first sample of meat they had butchered from Elric and Walter to celebrate their victory.
Daffy, you could tell pretty quickly that the piece of meat that they handed you is a hand. It's indeed a hand. It's got most of the upper, part of the arm here, but pretty much like this chunk right here is what they handed you. They gave you a pretty good piece. There's a lot of little tiny meat chunks in there.
Several more pieces of meat were passed out, and although the rest of the party wasn't as lucky, Agnomeio was able to replace the piece of his former acquaintance with a chunk of pork from Salt's bag of yum-yums.
I'll wash that ass cheek down with some Foursquare. It's the 2008.
Oh man, those year ones are so good.
Foursquare 2008. It'll get the taste of ass out of your mouth.
Yep.
With meat in their bellies and a full day of traveling, they laid down to sleep, with Knobolas and Mixweta taking first watch. It wasn't long before Mixweta noticed eyes peering at her from the surrounding jungle, and she got Knobolas' attention as two displacer beasts pounced from the underbrush towards Knobolas. Two more displacer beasts attacked the opposite side of the camp and began fighting the lizard men, several of whom fell to the feral cats. But our heroes remained mostly intact, save for Crocodile Booker, who fell unconscious in battle.
Atop the Triceratops, you have a view like no other, and you shoot from your laser eye, and you hit it just in the hindquarters, you blow its leg off, it no longer can run, and it lays down and dies.
This is where Knobolas peaks. Like, this is like the most iconic, on top of a freaking Triceratops shooting laser eyeballs.
That is super rad.
Knobolas cut some chunks of meat off the displacer beasts, handed it around to the party, and all of them fell asleep by the fire. A day away from the nest, while sleeping, Knobolas was visited by his patron.
Knobolas, I am Sulgradan. I felt it was long overdue for us to meet formally.
Sulgradan sticks his fork into the giant ribs in front of him, and then delicately separates the bones connecting the somewhat rotting flesh. He cuts a small bite and brings it up to his mouth. All of this delicacy in stark contrast to the disgusting chewing and eating noises that follow. In the next day, you will arrive at the lizard folk nest, and I need you to make Nask appear weak. Convince the tribe that his weakness brought the Gnoll attack upon the nest, or whatever else you come up with. Doesn't matter to me. But when the clan sees Nask as weak, Kuto will overthrow him and take charge as the leader of the clan. This will cement him as a follower of mine, and his soul will be forfeit. This is all the more delicious given the impending doom the tribe is likely to face at the hands of the Gnolls. The group wakes up, saddles their Triceratops, and heads through the jungle, ending up in a gully that was too narrow to ride the Triceratops through. While walking through the gully, an ambush appears with 4 Gnoll hunters raining arrows down on the group. Our heroes scaled rocks, Daffy and Knobolas did some impressive acrobatics, including Triceratops, and the Gnolls were dispatched quickly, one of which was chewed on post-death by Booker.
Booker, stop 9 on the Gnolls. Come on.
Booker is definitely, he's just chomping down, but I don't know.
He's playing in the water, and he's like flipping around with the little Gnoll body. He's really enjoying his little crocodile body.
Rolling in it.
However, the first Gnoll was able to blow their war horn, possibly alerting other Gnolls to their presence. The first guy did get his horn off, and we'll see if that matters or not.
See, that's what I wanted to know, if he got
Yeah,
the horn
that's what I'm
going.
worried.
Well, the very first guy did almost immediately.
Okay.
Yeah. Man, it's just kind of rude of him to get his horn off in public.
Yeah.
Well, you know,
Right
they're
in
animals.
front of right in front of the ladies too. What a non-gentleman.
The session ended, and they all arrived at the lizard folk nest. They met the leader of the mist scales known as Nask and were questioned as to the presence of McShweta the Knoll.
This Knoll, what are you doing here? What do you have to say? Groveling, she keeps her head down, and she goes, Hey, it's me, McShweta. I can tell you about the Knoll attack on your village. Ripper leads the Knolls, and he's very scary. You need to run and hide.
After hearing about the impending Knoll attack, Kuto and Nask went off privately to talk, or so they thought. Knobolas pretended to go off and drop a deuce, but instead made himself invisible and followed the chief of the clan.
That mystery meat that we ate earlier is just really upsetting my stomach, so I'll be in the bushes.
He had a little run-in with the guard, and when the guard didn't do exactly what Knobolas wanted, he was promptly shocked, blasted, and chopped in half in order to hide the body, giving us a bit of a warning that maybe it's best to listen to Knobolas.
This lizard man walking down the stairs, doubting himself, he's just like, what the hell kind of guard am I? I just ran up the stairs at a noise, and all of a sudden he gets grabbed around the throat, zapped, and then you just create a crater through his face with your eyeballs, just bzzz, and he is dead in your hand. You're holding him, but he is very dead. He didn't make a sound.
This murder wasn't fruitless, though, as he overheard Nask chastising Kuto for undermining him. Knobolas left the inner caves and rejoined his friends who had been investigating some strange boulders strewn about the nest. These boulders showed signs of carvings by stone giants known to live far away in the Thunderhowl Mountains. The session ended with Kuto challenging Nask to Ixin Vargok, or Fire Battle, for the position of Chief of the Mistscales.
A challenge of Ixin Vargok has been made. Tonight we feast and determine the new leader of the Mistscales.
Dusk had fallen on the nest, and they were about to witness Ixin Vargok, a ritualistic fight between the clan leader Nask and the challenger Kuto.
Tonight we have a challenger for Chief of the Mistscales. We will engage in Ixin Vargok. First to leave the circle or die is the loser. If you survive, you will leave and enter the jungle. Losers will receive no help from the clan and must fend for themselves.
Our adventurers chose the side of Kuto and were told they were not allowed to interfere in the fight, but more importantly, if they do, they cannot be caught. Bearing this in mind, they cast as many spells as we've ever seen them cast. Blessing, Guidance, Mage Hands, Agnomeio jumping up and down and getting Yona's attention.
Hey, Yona, what's up? I'm gonna get between her and the action. Be like, Yona, what's up with that trident? That is not a regulation trident, Yona. Yona, what are you running here? What kind of circus are you running here, Yona? Yona.
And then attempting to punch another lizard man in the face.
And I'm seeing an opportunity to go punch some folk. So I'm gonna go run over here.
All right.
And I'm just gonna run over and just cold cock this lizard folk.
Nice, go for it.
They did everything they could to make Nask lose, but he was a formidable fighter, and looked like he'd win, until Knobolas called upon his patron and caused Nask to see everyone around him as an enemy. He attacked wildly, stabbing Yona, TaLin, and while distracted, he was knocked out of the ring by Kuto. The group celebrated with Kuto and the rest of the lizard folk when they heard the beating of drums.
All right, you look to the top of the waterfall and see a crazed-looking knoll. He's holding a javelin above his head. He's got giant pauldrons with bloody spikes protruding from them. The skulls of lizard and humanoid alike adorn the spikes, and you see a frayed rope draped over him. His eyes are glowing red, and his armor seems to be billowing this black smoke just repeatedly off of him. He's almost enveloped in the stuff. There's a group of gnolls standing at his back, and they all are holding longbows. They draw the bow, and McShweta looks up. She says, "Pew pew!" as they all loose their arrows.
Ripper had followed the group through the wilderness, hunting both the tribe and McShweta. Arrows rained down upon our adventurers, striking several of the lizard folk, and TaLin rushed for cover behind a giant boulder, knowingly putting herself directly in the sights, but out of the range of Ripper and his archers. Gnolls rushed in from all sides of the camp. The Mistscales attempted to gather up their eggs and retreat into the cave when a piercing screech filled the air, and a large feathered demonic creature with raptor-like claws swooped down and began harrying the scaled warriors. As the battle raged on, Agnomeio found himself toe-to-toe with Kuto, the newly appointed Mist-Scale chieftain. Still weakened from the fight with Nash, Kuto looked to Agnomeio for aid, but quickly found a rapier stabbed into his belly.
You have made an enemy of the gnomes, my friend,
spoke Agnomeio as Kuto fell to the ground. Turning back to the fight, Agnomeio noticed the ground begin glowing purple, as if the very roots under his feet were veins for some wicked arcane creature. Kuto was engulfed in a plume of magenta and lavender, his body being sucked beneath the earth. Soil and mud closed in around him, leaving a subtle violet glow. A voice rumbled from some unknown location.
Kuto, come to me.
Meanwhile, on the other side of the camp, Daffy and Alessio had released the Triceratops from their pens, climbed atop them, and were charging into the gnolls, skewering and trampling them indiscriminately. Raking and clawing at the Triceratops, 2 gnolls found their way onto both Daffy and Alessio's steeds, and the two began fighting on the backs of their mounts. Slashing and stabbing, Daffy eviscerated one gnoll, then showed it the business side of her boot as she kicked it from the back of the charging Triceratops.
With the power of
Christ.
my mighty boot, can I, just kick him real hard off Triceratops?
Absolutely you can. Alessio ran another gnoll through with his rapier, leaving the weapon stuck inside of his enemy as it tumbled down the scaly hide of the dinosaur. He falls off the Triceratops. He takes enough damage from the fall to die. So he falls to the ground dead. You are still on top of the Triceratops.
Now you look like a salami sandwich.
So here's the thing. Alessio.
Shit, that is your rapier.
Yep, he's got your rapier in his chest.
Son of a bitch.
Knobolas grabbed McShweta and cast invisibility on both of them, then pulled her towards the east, attempting to get a more advantageous position, or possibly avoid the fighting altogether. But this would not last, as 2 hyenas sniffed the air, clearly able to smell them, and Knobolas, his eyes glowing a distinct purple, destroyed them both with his eldritch blasts. And a 6 will also kill it. Zap, zap, you pew pew, and both of the hyenas drop to the ground. McShweta looks at you very proudly. She's happy for you. Ripper jumped from the cliff overlooking the battle and showed his horrible weapon, a barbed javelin attached to a rope made for piercing and reeling back in his victims. Ripper threw his javelin at TaLin, but missed. The two fought, but the halfling kept Ripper's attention as Booker swam up behind him and bit the rope in half. So Booker jumps out of the water and he bites through the rope, and you see Ripper looks down at the rope as it drops down into the ground. He is no longer attached to his spear. Oh,
look at that teamwork.
I'm so sad. I'm so sad right now.
I'm feeling inspired because Agnomeio has come and been, to help out his fellow small folk.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm also gonna taunt him, be like, "You dropped your little toy." Right before he kills me.
Ripper retreated back atop the cave, grabbed a bow from one of his archers, and released an arrow towards TaLin, piercing her through the chest.
I told you you'd pay.
A brief but deafening silence came over the battlefield as she clutched the arrow. Her body went limp, and she splashed backwards into the water. Agnomeio rushed to her aid, dragging her into the Mist-Scale cave as she fought for her life. Several of the Mist-Scales and all of our adventurers were able to retreat into the cave, as Yona shaped the very ground they stood on and sealed the entrance. They had entered the Mist-Scale lair and begun exploring around this new subterranean refuge. They ventured north, finding a peculiar iron door marked with runes indicating it was from the kingdom of Benoth Besmedan, the northern forge of Avera. Beyond the door, a lazily drifting chartreuse waterfall of fog fell from the ceiling into a pit in the floor. Deeper into the cave, they discovered the sleeping area of the Mist-Scales and had their wounds tended to. Knobolas was visited by his patron and offered a gift. Alessio was spoken to by Nexori and informed of a special item of great power within this cave that he must acquire. While resting, they spoke with Shaskis and offered to take some of the lizard folk eggs to the ziggurat and are being escorted by Chax, one of the Mist-Scale warriors, through the cave. Finding that the rope bridge which would normally allow passage over a raging river was cut and dangling, they turned back. They then had a quick interaction with 2 prisoners, a human and an orc, and moved further into a cave. Picking a lock on a door, they saw Yona hunkered in her quarters, surrounded by fire, and seemingly praying to some sort of deity. This has been a recap of episodes 25 through 30 of the Lands of Dimidium. If you like what you heard, come join us on Monday nights at 9:30 p.m. Or if you prefer to listen, you can find our podcast on any podcast provider. Just search for Dungeons and Drams podcast. And we'll see you next time in the Lands of Dimidium.